Today, we are talking about something that every digital entrepreneur will eventually need to do. Upgrade your computer hardware for better performance. We'll cover the different types of hardware in your computer. We'll give you a brief summary of what each piece of hardware does and how it affects your computer's performance. We'll also go over what some of these acronyms actually mean, and most importantly, what you want to look for when choosing new parts. We'll discuss the RAM, the SSD, the CPU, the graphics card, so you know exactly what you need and what to look for when it's time to upgrade the hardware in your computer. First up, we're going to talk about the CPU, or the central processing unit. So the central processing unit is basically the brain of your entire computer. It decides how fast your system can think, react, and how well it handles multiple tasks at one time. In layman's terms, the CPU is like the manager of an office. If the manager is slow, then everyone is waiting on them to figure out what tasks they need to do and what their duties are for the day. Basically, a CPU upgrade lets your computer process more instructions per second, which makes everything from multitasking to basic navigation noticeably faster. What you want to look for in a CPU upgrade are the different socket types that match your motherboard. You'll want a higher core count for your multitasking, a higher clock speed, typically measured in gigahertz, or GHz for short, which will give you a quicker speed and you'll be able to move quicker when you're doing individual tasks. And you will likely want a newer generation of central processing unit for better efficiency and performance. For enterprise grade or refurbished central processing units, especially for workstations and servers, Alta Technologies is a good source for tested, compatible hardware. If you are a small business or an individual who wants to upgrade their computer, there are a multitude of websites and in-person stores as well that specialize in custom computer builds, and typically they can walk you through exactly what model of central processing unit you may need for the computer you have. One of the easiest ways to figure out what CPU upgrade would be a good option for you is to go to the computer manufacturer's website, or you could even type in a Reddit forum specifically for the model of computer you have. There are a multitude of websites that provide CPU upgrades and newer generations of CPUs. It will take very minimal legwork on the user's end to figure out exactly what they need for the model of computer they have. The next thing we're going to talk about is RAM, or random access memory. This is essentially your computer's short-term memory. It lets your system keep multiple tasks open at the same time without slowing down. RAM is kind of like the size of your desk, if we're going to keep the corporate office example moving. RAM would be a bigger desk that lets you spread out more sheets of paper, more applications or files simultaneously. It essentially lets you multitask better on your device. More RAM essentially lets your system keep more data instantly accessible, and this reduces slowdowns when you're multitasking, swapping between different programs, or working with large files. When you're looking to upgrade your RAM, you will need to see what type of RAM your motherboard supports, whether it's DDR3, DDR4, or DDR5. And you'll need to see the maximum speed that your system is built to handle. This is typically measured in megahertz, or MHz for short. And you will also want enough capacity for your workload. This depends on what you're using your device for. If it's just light or basic programs and tasks, typically 8 gigabytes is fine. Standard, kind of normal range for your RAM is 16 gigabytes. And you will typically want 32 gigabytes or more when you're using a lot of AI tools, or if you're a content editor or content creator. For enterprise level systems, ECC RAM, or error correcting code, helps prevent data errors when you are running very large scale programs and systems simultaneously. Error correcting code RAM automatically fixes small memory errors, which gives servers and workstations a lot more stability. If you aren't running an enterprise level operation, you don't have a vast system array of networks and devices, you probably don't need to worry about the ECC options much. Again, there are a multitude of ways to find out the best options for upgrading your RAM. The easiest way, again, would be to look at the manufacturer's website or check a quick Reddit forum. A lot of times the manufacturer's website will have an upgrade tree for your device and model. That makes it very easy to figure out exactly what component you need, and then there are a multitude of suppliers online or potentially in person as well, where you can find the upgraded piece you need very quickly. The next thing you'll want to take a look at is probably your storage. And there are a few different storage types as well, depending on what generation of computer you're running and what type of hardware it's made with initially. The basic storage option is a hard disk drive, or HDD. The basic storage option is a hard disk drive, or an HDD. These are the old school spinning drives. The HDD is like a giant warehouse. It has a lot of space, but it can be slow to access and slow to find exactly what you're looking for. HDDs hold large amounts of data, but they read and write slowly because they have mechanical parts that physically move in the component. If you're upgrading your HDD, typically drives that run at 7200 RPM, or revolutions per minute, offer better performance than anything with a slower speed than that. You'll want a larger capacity, typically like a 2 terabyte minimum for long-term storage, terabyte being abbreviated with TB, or maybe an NAS grade drive if you're using this for an array of servers or if it is constantly running. Then you have your SSD or your solid state drives. These are much faster. They're a newer generation of storage drives. They don't have mechanical moving parts. They're all electrical inside. Upgrading to an SSD makes booting up, opening apps, and loading files dramatically faster. Think of this as an automated Amazon warehouse, if you will. You can simply type in the system exactly what you're looking for, and your automated robotic conveyor system can drop the item that you're looking for in the warehouse instantly into the crate in front of you. If you have an older system, you'll typically want a SATA type SSD. SATA spelled SATA. You'll typically want at least 500 gigabytes of capacity, and you'll want a good durability, which is typically your TBW rating. The reason you will want a SATA style SSD for your older systems is because these are typically compatible with the communication methods that the older systems use. Typically these can be used to replace the HDD in an older system, so they're normally compatible with previous generations of drives. And to further elaborate on the TBW rating, this is the terabytes written rating, which essentially is the total mileage you can put on the drive before it starts to wear out. Kind of like the mileage on a car. So if your car is typically rated for 400,000 miles before you start to have major issues or starts to break down to the point where you need a new car, your terabytes written, or TBW rating, is the rating that your drive has, and you can process and store that amount of information before it may be time to replace your drive. The latest type of SSD you can upgrade to is a non-volatile memory express SSD, or NVMe for short. They use the faster PCLE connection instead of the old SATA serial connection, which allows several times more data flow if you're running intense workloads. Typically, you'll need to make sure you have M.2 slots on your motherboard, PCLE Generation 3 or newer compatibility, and these will give you very high read and write speeds on your drive, typically 3,000 megabytes per second and up to 7,000 or more megabytes per second. The last major component you'll typically want to look at upgrading is your GPU, or your graphics processing unit. This handles all the visuals, graphics, and compute-heavy tasks like video editing, rendering, and AI workloads. The GPU is basically like hiring a specialist who takes visual or compute-heavy tasks off of the CPU's plate, as you can see here. Upgrading your GPU dramatically increases performance in visual applications, video editing, and AI tools by offloading a lot of work from the central processing unit. Typically, what you want to look for when you're upgrading your graphics processing unit is enough VRAM, which is your video memory. If you're doing light work, you may only need 4 to 6 gigabytes. If you are a content creator or content editor, you may want to go a little higher in the 8 to 12 gigabyte range. And if you're doing large AI workloads or 4K workloads, you may want 16 or more gigabytes because you'll need a little more storage. You also need to make sure that your power supply can supply enough power to the GPU because it's going to be doing a lot more work visually, especially if you're working with a lot of graphics. You want to make sure your case has enough space physically for the GPU. You will also need a free PCIe X16 slot in your physical device. And there are certain software requirements depending on the type of graphics processing unit you select and depending on the individual device you have. For most of these components, Alta Technologies is a pretty good starting point for finding an upgraded GPU, updated drives, RAM, or your central processing unit, because they support many different brands. They support many different manufacturers, many different models, and that can be a good starting point if you don't go directly to the manufacturer's website or don't find another vendor online. The best part about Alta Technologies is that all of their components are tested, certified, and they have members on staff that can help you find exactly what you're looking for. If you're not quite sure where to start when looking for new GPUs, CPUs, RAM components, or drives, Alta Technologies can be a great first stop because they have a designated staff that can work with you to figure out exactly what components will fit your brand and model of computer and what will satisfy your workload. And all their components are factory tested and certified so that you don't have to guess at what piece may fit your computer and what might satisfy your workload, no matter how intense. And the best part is a lot of these pieces are refurbished, so the price point will be much lower than if you buy straight from the manufacturer, and you can trust that these pieces are up to snuff and that they're going to perform as advertised, as opposed to buying from other vendors online or even in person.